Hi everybody!
The gaming landscape is vastly different than it was in early 2014 when Infamous Second Son released. Media has changed a fair deal as well. The Marvel Cinematic Universe was only in its infancy by then. To that point, there had only been 8 films in the franchise. The MCU has vastly impacted media as a whole. Some would say it has reached saturation point and has burnt out the superhero genre. I actually agree with that point. The last Marvel film I really loved was Thor Ragnarok, though I did enjoy Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, but beyond that, I've stopped caring about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I still love the superhero genre though, and I'm incredibly excited for Spider-Man 2 when that comes out for the PS5 this October. So why am I making a video on the Infamous series? Because I feel Sony could do something interesting with the IP while still capitalizing on the popularity of the superhero genre before the bubble bursts. Before I get into how I feel Sony could adapt the property to the modern gaming landscape, we need to cover the series and its history. The first game, simply called Infamous, came out in 2009, meaning it came out during that console's third year on the market. Many consider 2006 and 2007 to have been rough years for the PS3 in terms of sales and exclusive games. I wouldn't exactly agree with this viewpoint, as the console had seen a slew of pretty good titles ranging from Resistance during its launch window, Ratchet & Clank Future Tools of Destruction, Heavenly Sword, Folklore, and the first Uncharted game all in 2007. MotorStorm also saw a release in the West, giving the PS3 a relatively respectable lineup of games. It was just selling poorly because of how expensive the bloody console was.
You're goddamn right.
2008 also saw some decent exclusives such as the first Little Big Planet, Metal Gear Solid 4, an experimental follow-up to Tools of Destruction with Quest for Booty, Resistance 2, MotorStorm Pacific Rift, and Valkyria Chronicles. Yes, that was exclusive at one point in time. Look it up. Though a few exclusives did shit the bed. Those include Lair, a few shovelware titles, and Haze. Especially fucking Haze. God, that game had great potential and landed flatter than one of my jokes. Anyways, by 2009, the PS3's library wasn't too bad, all things considered, even if a lot of people shat on it for having no games. For many, though, 2009 was the year the console started finally coming alive. In terms of exclusives that year, there was Ratchet & Clank, A Crack in Time, widely considered one of the series' best offerings, Uncharted 2, and of course the topic of this video, Infamous. I wasn't all that invested in superheroes at that point in time. I was still somewhat of an edgy and quite frankly douchey teenager.
You're goddamn right.
So the grimier and grittier aesthetic of the Infamous games excited me, and honestly it was a great direction for the game to go, despite the 7th generation of consoles being stuffed to the gills with brown, grey, and beige-looking games, because that was
It's a style at the time.
Infamous was a bit of an oddball game for its developer Sucker Punch Productions. To that point in time, Sucker Punch only had Rocket Robot on wheels for the N64 and the Sly Cooper trilogy under their belts. Not exactly a studio that screams tough and grizzled superhero, but somehow the team at Sucker Punch were able to make a really fun game with a really compelling narrative. Infamous is actually one of the very few platinum trophies I have. I love the game that much.
Get on with it.
Yes, get on with it!
Anyways, hindsight being 2020 and all that, Sucker Punch is now one of PlayStation's premier studios, and the lessons they learned with their 3 Infamous games and the lessons from Sly Cooper, and have applied them to Ghost of Tsushima, which was effectively the PS4's swan song. Getting back to Infamous though, development began on the title when production was wrapping on Sly Cooper 3: Honor Among Thieves. Producer Brian Fleming said the game took roughly 3 years to develop with 60 staff members, but production could have been cut to 2 years had Sucker Punch asked Sony for additional resources. Either way, that's an interesting fact. What's also interesting is how Sucker Punch wanted to take what they'd learned with Sly Cooper and apply it to a new game while also learning what the PS3 was capable of at the same time. The dev team also wanted to do something more brazen and loud than the Sly Cooper games. Anyways, history lesson out of the way, let's get into how Sucker Punch can adapt Infamous to the modern gaming space. Right now, superheroes are probably the biggest thing in popular culture. To counter this point, there needs to be counterculture. If Sucker Punch decided they want to revisit the infamous series at some point, they're able to capitalize on this counterculture rather easily. Infamous was never about the perfect hero. The original protagonist, Cole McGrath, never had a squeaky clean image. He was always rough around the edges. And let's be honest, every once in a while superheroes need to embrace the grittier side. Infamous presents us with the grittier side of superheroes by utilizing its karma system. While the choices were entirely binary between good and evil options, it did show Cole in a morally gray area when trying to make his decisions. With Infamous Second Son, this trend continued with protagonist Dulcin Rowe. While Infamous did embrace showing the darker path on the karma scale, where your character would become, well, infamous, the game always felt like a half measure for what it was trying to go for, which is to show superheroes in a different light. One where they aren't just paragons of virtue. Basically, if Sucker Punch did something with the series, they could do a lot with the property by doubling down on showing the characters in morally gray areas, and the karma system could actually have a third-tier option to it, one sitting between Hero and Infamous. This would put the Infamous series more in line with the likes of Alan Moore's Watchmen series. By adding this option, not only would there be more depth to the game's narrative, there'd also be ample opportunity to deconstruct the superhero construct and explore the idea of an anti-hero or an anti-villain, depending on the choices the players make. Also, if you look at comics such as the aforementioned Watchmen or another of Alan Moore's work, V for Vendetta, you'll find that superhero comics targeted at more mature audiences can and do work. The only M-rated superhero game I can think of offhand is Prototype, which is a game series I'd love to see make a return. Though having said that, I would not be surprised if Marvel's Wolverine gets a hard M rating. Either way, the more mature tone of the Infamous series would work well for a counterculture take on the superhero genre as it stands at present. Also, given where Infamous Second Son's story ends, they could do a lot with that in terms of storylines, especially since Dulcin is able to absorb the powers of other conduits. Now, the gameplay is harder to pin down since Infamous already has a pretty well-established formula, and it'd be hard to improve upon. However, the game is at its most fun when played in a larger city that's densely packed. I don't know about you lot, but I had a lot more fun with the first Infamous game and Infamous Second Son than I did with Infamous 2. Though I will admit the second game with its New Orleans-like setting was a visual spectacle for the PlayStation 3. However, given the power of the PS5, Sucker Punch or whoever makes an Infamous sequel, if it happens, would be able to build an absolutely massive city with lots of things to interact with. Personally, I'd love to see a return to Empire City, which brings us on to our next point. Let's face it, when it comes to Infamous and its characters, you're not thinking of Dulcin Rowe, you're thinking of Cole. If Infamous were to return, it'd just make sense to reboot the whole thing and focus on Cole yet again. As I said previously, Dulcin could be an interesting jumping off point if that were the route they take, but Cole is just a far more popular character. Also, Cole being a grumpier and gruffer character makes him fit the whole counterculture point far better than Dulcin, who's just a snot-nosed punk. So choosing Cole makes more sense from a tonal point of view, and he is far more marketable as a character, which would help Sony bring in a larger audience. So that's how I could see Sony tackling a future Infamous game in the current gaming landscape. I don't have much more to say other than I think it'd be one of the most beautiful games if it were to happen. So would you like to see the Infamous series make a return? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. 2 of my previous videos will be popping up on screen now. One is the top 10 studios Sony should consider acquiring, and the other is one about my thoughts on the May 2023 PlayStation Showcase. Check them out, and until next time, keep blazing that trail.